All right, hello, people of YouTube land. Those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, those that are part of the Cringe Crew Gaming Community Discord, and those that are listening to this podcast on Spotify or whatever podcast hosting uh, thing that you're listening to this to. As you can tell, this has been a kind of a stressful day for this. But anyway, I'm Traductus.
And I'm Ted.
And this is the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast. This is the Halloween special, I guess. Well, part of it, where we're reviewing horror films and we talk about them every day in October. Or
Yeah,
almost every day in October.
the better part of 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So first thing that we're doing is 5 what I consider essential werewolf films. How this came around. It was a conversation that somebody was saying all werewolf films are the same. I said like, nah, not really. But then we just kind of like, hey, why don't we just do that as like a thing? Oh, and Ted and I were also talking. Like Ted hadn't seen like many of like a lot of classic horror films. So we're gonna throw in basically like 5 after we do the werewolf films. Later on we're gonna do like 5 like I'd say what I would consider iconic horror films, while trying not to dabble into directors that we might cover in the regular podcast. Which, you know, if you haven't been listening or watching, what we do is we take a director and we go through their entire filmography and we review every movie and rank them. I'm not sure like we're gonna be ranking stuff for like the horror thing, are we?
Probably not. It's in their short
Yeah.
lists.
Yeah. Also, if I am correct, Haley's doing like a thing for like a week as well for like this thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that was set in stone. Otherwise, we'd have to re-record this entire fucking thing.
Fuck it, we ball, Stallman. Fuck it, we ball.
Yeah. But anyway, for essential werewolf films, one I was definitely going to pick was the 1941 movie, The Wolfman, which is what we just saw. The reason why I picked The Wolfman is because one, it marks down a thing for like, you know, one of the classic Universal monster movies, which includes, you know, Dracula, Frankenstein, Family Opera, which Ted has actually seen.
It's true.
And Invisible Man, The Mummy, you know, the list goes kind of on of like, you know, the classic Universal horror films. So this checks 2 boxes. Also, the fact that a lot of werewolf films do borrow heavily from The Wolfman. This was released in 1941, directed by George Wagner. Released December 9th, 1941. In the United States and the United Kingdom was December 12th. And this had a budget of $180,000, which in today's money is $3 million. And to basically match that with like a budget of like a newer horror film, the latest Scream movie was $30 million. So shoestring budget here for this movie. As I assume was with like a lot of these Universal horror films, like usually it was like, you know, cheaply made, but like they made a shit ton of money. Unfortunately, I do not have like a box office thing, just the budget. So now background, we have for the cast Lon Chaney Jr. as Lawrence Larry Talbot, who is the one who becomes the Wolfman. Lon Chaney Jr., the son of legendary horror film actor, actually just legendary actor in general of Lon Chaney, Lon Chaney Jr.'s actual name is Creighton Chaney. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't his breakout role, although it's his most famous role. His breakout role was playing Lenny Small in the 1939 adaptation of Mice and Men. That's when he started being billed as Lon Chaney Jr. Before that, he was just listed as Creighton Chaney. And didn't get into acting until after his father died because his father didn't want him to get into acting. But he, after his father died, he ended up getting into acting.
Screw you, Dad.
He actually had like a, which is interesting when I do get into likes and dislikes with this. In real life, he didn't have like a horrible relationship with his dad, but it was a little strained. Due to the fact that his dad was just acting all the time and wasn't around a lot, to the point where when his dad divorced his mom, although Lon Chaney Jr. didn't realize that his parents divorced, his dad told him that his mom passed away. And Lon Chaney Jr. didn't find that out until after his dad passed away, and when lo and behold, saw that his mother was very much well alive. But between that point, Lon Chaney Jr. was in like a boarding school until his dad remarried and was able to, to actually take care of him. But other than that, he still loved his father, got into acting, wanted to avoid the horror shtick because he didn't want to be like typecast. He wanted to be like, he didn't want to have like be typecasted at first, and also wanted to become an actor on his own merit as opposed to like being the son of, Lon Chaney Sr. Well, afterwards he's just like, well, the studio wants me to be Lon Chaney Jr., I have to accept it. And then he ended up being in horror films, with this being the biggest one, and had a real good career in like horror films and just in movies in general. And in this film, he is billed as Lon Chaney. Apparently, the reason why with that instead of Lon Chaney Jr. was, I guess, Universal wanted to like confuse audiences. But I don't think anybody's that stupid to be like, oh wow, Lon Chaney's still alive, when, he died like 10 years before this movie was made. Like, I know the internet wasn't a thing, but like, I think audiences would kind of realize when a big famous actor that's known for the Man of 1,000 Faces has been dead for 10 years, and that's his son that's on the screen. Wouldn't you agree, Ted?
I mean, I guess. I don't fucking know.
Oh, God.
I feel like even with the internet, dude, I don't know half the celebrities that fucking die, so I don't fucking know.
All right. But you would know if Brad Pitt died, right?
Maybe. I don't fucking know.
Oh, okay. Not saying that Lon Chaney was Brad Pitt, but he was like as famous as Brad Pitt is now back then. We have Claude Rains as Sir John Talbot, who is Larry Talbot's father. We have Maria Ouspenskaya. Oh God. Ouspenskaya as Maliva, the Romani Sorceress. What?
I feel like that was just accidentally racist. You butchered that so bad. Jesus Christ.
He's Russian. All right, I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian. We also have we also have Evelyn Ankers as Gwen Conlife, who is for lack of a better word, Lon Chaney Jr.'s love interest in the film, but more so him just pursuing her as a love interest as opposed to her actually being a love interest. And the other person of note, Bela Lugosi, as who is Easily casted with the name Bela, who is the sorceress's son, who is the original werewolf that ends up biting Lon Chaney Jr. Bela Lugosi, best known for playing Dracula in the Universal horror film Dracula. Oddly enough, despite him being the most iconic actor to ever play Dracula, he only played the role twice. Once in Dracula, and then another time in Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Funny enough, Bela Lugosi was trying to be cast as Larry Talbot, but ended up getting this role instead. Another person that was recommended for the role was Boris Karloff, who's best known for playing as Frankenstein, and not Frankenstein, but the Frankenstein monster in Frankenstein. He's also the original The Grinch, Boris Karloff, but they end up not getting Karloff, and then they end up getting Lon Chaney Jr. And originally, this movie wasn't supposed to show the werewolf. It was originally supposed to be a psychological thing. However, Universal Studios was like, nah, audiences would want to see the werewolf. So we end up getting the werewolf on screen. Which when we get into likes and dislikes, I will kind of get into my thoughts on that, and probably Ted's as well if he has anything to add on that. But regardless, the makeup for the werewolf is a iconic depiction in horror cinema. This movie also, like I said, made a ton of money. A lot of werewolf movies take a lot from this. Also, this movie ended up having a couple sequels, although they weren't standalone sequels. It was like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and like House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. Basically, like, let's take all these Universal monsters and have them battle with each other. Although the only person to actually play the Wolfman throughout all of these was Lon Chaney Jr., something that he was very proud of. This movie has been remade with Benicio del Toro with the role of being the Wolfman in the 2010 remake, and this movie is planned on being remade again, originally with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with the title character, but now it is set in stone that it's going to be Ryan Gosling, and Derek Cianfrance is going to write and direct it as of October 2021. So whether that gets made or not, we shall see. This movie was also listed in the reference book for 1001 movies you must see before you die. For anybody wondering what was number one on that list, that's Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm not entirely sure what the I'm not entirely sure what ranking the Wolfman was, but it's on, at least 1001 for that. That being said, as further ado, likes and dislikes. So whatever you want to go first.
All right. My list for this is super short. There's really just not a lot to talk about for me. I thought for being a 1941 film, the lighting was pretty good.
Oh yeah, and I will say that's the thing with like all of these Universal horror films, despite how like a lot of them are kind of like B movies, but despite them being B movies, a lot of them are like well shot for whatever goddamn reason.
Oh, don't get too far ahead of yourself. I would not at all call this movie well shot.
Well, at least lighting.
I think lighting is a medium that's a whole lot easier with color, right? That you can kind of play with color in lieu of light. When it's a black and white film, like it genuinely needs to be well lit to be able to discern what you're seeing. And honestly, like even with it being black and white, you still got a sense of when it was light out, when it was dark out. Like you got a feel for the movie, despite it being without color. I think the lighting was really good.
Yeah.
I guess there was enough like mystery and confusion to keep this mostly entertaining.
Yeah, because like there are parts where you can definitely tell that originally the werewolf wasn't supposed to be shown, and it was supposed to be left ambiguous whether he was a werewolf or just going crazy. And unfortunately, they obviously didn't modify the script enough to like not make that obvious.
Well,
if you already know about it,
Well, and I think that like you have the ability to watch with hindsight too, right? Is that like so often now in modern movies we get to like see the ads, we understand what the movie's about, we get to go see it with some frame of reference, right? And I don't know how similar that was in 1941, how different it was. Whatever.
I linked the trailer, and the trailer doesn't really. It does show the wolf, I think, but
if it gets advertised or written in papers about the werewolf movies, you know what I mean? Like, okay, well, I know this. Somebody changes from a wolf to a human, right? They're like,
right.
But I guess there's enough mystique around it, like hey, I know I got bit by this wolf, and now it isn't there, and certain people can see certain symbols and things, and different like omens and stuff like that. There's a lot about it that just kind of keeps you on your toes even when you know what it's about at the end. Like obviously you have a pretty good grip on the fact that this is just a fucking werewolf movie, but at the end of the day, like I mean there's enough to keep you invested.
And there's stuff that this does different than most werewolf films, because the full moon doesn't come into play until the sequels. Like it's just like the autumn moon is shown. I mean, it's like the moon is shown during autumn. So like every time the moon's shown in autumn, you're a werewolf. Like it doesn't have to be full, which makes things kind of worse.
Yeah, it does. It does like make me question some tropes, right? Like this has to be towards the beginning of that whole like werewolf thing, right? Like, I much like Frankenstein
and the poem's complete. And the poem's completely original too. Like a lot of people thought that was actually like traditional werewolf myth. That was actually started here.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like so, like Frankenstein starts with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right? Like there's an origin place for it, and I can't imagine this is so far away from werewolves, right? That like this helped create some of that origin, right? And so it's weird to see that some of the tropes that we have now just don't exist. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that this is actually one of like the few Universal horror films from this era that aren't based off of like a book, because Dracula's based off a book, The Invisible Man's based off of a book. Like from like this time period, the only two other ones that aren't based off of a book are The Mummy and Creature from the Black Lagoon. So like 3 out of like the million that they started hawking out, because we know how it is with like Marvel films. That's what it was with the Universal horror films. Was like every freaking year we keep making money. Yeah. Which again with Marvel films, some of these movies have good quality. Some of them are really bad.
Well, and with quality too, I don't want to stray too far away from the lighting. The camera angle sucked. So at the beginning, right, they're using trees that are in this forest to kind of mask things that like would block something that like. So the transition from human into wolf, right? They're trying to leave bodies behind trees so that you can't see them, right? There's not blood, gore, violence, whatever, right? It's all implied, right? And that makes sense. Right, but then there are other scenes where it's just
especially since this was made like while the Hays Code was a thing, and the thing with like Dracula and Frankenstein, they had the benefit of not being around while the Hays Code was a thing, so they're a little bit more violent.
Well, but I get it, and while it was like okay, hey, that's kind of noticeable, it wasn't like offensive. I get offensive is a lack of a better word, but then there's other scenes where it's just like, hey, these two people are talking, but there's a tree branch that covers 3/4 of the screen and you can't see their faces anymore. Like it's just really unnecessary that they're in the way. And man, the camera angles really fucking sucked. I recognize this is a 1940s film. Dialogue felt forced.
Yeah, that's the thing with like my when we get into like dislikes, I do have a few likes to add, but I should actually put my input. The acting is definitely very dated. Like
it just feels like there's no like connection between the lines that they're saying and the actions that need to occur. Right. So
yeah.
the one example that comes immediately to mind is when he's trying to pick up his love interest, not the love interest, right? That she's like, nope. Actually, my friend wants to come, and now we're just all a gang of friends, and we're laughing and cheery and happy. But there's no dialogue that transitions you from A to B. It's immediately from discomfort to we're all jovial and friends. There's no real like smooth transition to get from one point to the next, and the dialogue especially, but somewhat the acting, it all just feels embellished and forced.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and like seeing like, I mean, even though this is Lon Chaney Jr.'s like most famous performance, I think that it's not his best, and I think even though like the later like sequels with the Wolfman are like of less quality, he's better as the Wolfman in those than this. But I do say that there are a few positives of like how he does something and how like the story pans out that I will get into that I think kind of like counter that. And the thing that I like about this, like, as I was like, for one, me talking about like Lon Chaney Jr. and his dad, that dynamic and stuff. There's a dynamic with Larry Tolbert and his dad in this, as in like they had a strained relationship, and then they kind of reconcile, and then they ended up like going back and forth because his dad doesn't believe that he's a werewolf, and he's like, no, I'm a werewolf, like I need to get out of the area before I kill someone. Like I can't be around anybody. And then, you know, at the end we had should I spoil the ending or no?
Send it.
All right, so he doesn't get shot with a silver bullet, but he gets beat to death with a cane that he gives his dad that has a silver handle. And it's honestly, you know, kind of like I know it's not intentional, but it's kind of like Lon Chaney Jr. accepting his own fate, that he's gonna forever be in his dad's shadow, so he accepts it for, you know, being in these horror films, and then, you know, having his dad's name attached to his, you know, as his like, you know, acting name. And so it's kind of like, you know, Creighton Chaney's dead, now it's Lon Chaney Jr., you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of found that neat. But I thought what was really cool, and well, actually, like reading this up, a lot of interpretations of the film say that it's kind of an allegory for puberty or the id. And I didn't know this at the time while watching this, but it kind of makes sense with like the id ways, because like Larry Tolbert, for like Tolbert, oh god damn it, for lack of a better word, is basically a predator before he becomes a werewolf, with his pursuit of what's her goddamn name in this movie? Gwen, with his pursuit of Gwen, especially since she says no, like I'm engaged, and then when he becomes the werewolf, he's still pursuing her, and then at the end, you know, actually pursues her as the beast.
Oh, and he pursues her
Therefore,
like a cretin.
It's like he's
disgusting.
Yeah. Ugh. And yeah, it's like he's already a predator to begin with, and like the werewolf is just the beast within. And I think that is really, really, like, you know, awesome and actually does make the, because they could have just easily like, oh, he gets bit by a werewolf and the werewolf causes havoc. The fact that the werewolf is a metaphor for his own like bestial desires.
I'm gonna need you to hold this down for 2 minutes. I got a phone call. Just keep talking.
All right, but the fact that that it is a metaphor for his own bestial desires just makes it a smarter movie than like it had any reason to be, especially with like how small of a budget that it was, especially since this movie would have made money anyway just because it was a Universal horror film. The fact that they actually put the effort to actually make a story that was rather interesting by making the werewolf not just a monster, but it's a part of him that was already there to begin with. I thought was really, really damn well done. And honestly, like, with that in mind, like, I think the story itself holds up, although there are shortcomings where, you know, there's a lot of things that are dated. There's a lot of, like, as Ted was saying, with dialogue, a lot of dialogue seemed forced, a lot of things seem kind of rushed. With a little bit of tweaking, like, this could have been like a very, very, very like perfect movie, and it honestly makes me excited. Even though I've never seen the Benicio del Toro remake, it actually makes me kind of want to watch that, and it also makes me excited for like a remake with Ryan Gosling to see, like, you know, taking that original story and seeing how like they, you know, tweak it to actually make it, you know, hold up better.
Yeah, but like it's Ryan Gosling, so I feel like I know how it's gonna go.
It's gonna go like really good, or
I mean, everybody's gonna love it, and it's not gonna be that much different.
Yeah. That being said, also with dislikes, I honestly think it's kind of a waste of Bela Lugosi. Also, what I think is kind of ridiculous is that when Bela Lugosi is the werewolf, he's actually a wolf. But while Lon Chaney Jr.'s the werewolf, he's actually like a werewolf. And it makes sense when you're not supposed to see, originally you're not supposed to see the werewolf, but it is kind of jarring. You know, like there isn't that consistency.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess it didn't stick out while watching it because it was supposed to be like a throwaway behind closed doors, right? Well,
right.
You know, more behind like a tree, but and then when you're supposed to actually watch the action happen, like it's supposed to be in the forefront and it's not supposed to be something hidden in the shadows. Like it was much more human-like than wolf-like. So I get why they did it, and it didn't bother me watching. But I also definitely understand your perspective there.
Yeah. That being said, I'm not sure about the makeup on the werewolf, because part of me, it's like, I know it's iconic, but it does look a little like weird. Especially like with how werewolf movies have like came, you know, like evolved, where it actually like, you know, looks a little bit more.
It's pretty janky. Yeah, it is not good looking.
That, and also the transformation. They all have transformation scenes. This one's like the only one that I've seen where there isn't like a transformation to a werewolf, like a full like where you see like, you know, like the facial transformation. You only kind of see like the feet, but it's in reverse, as in like when he, you know, becomes, you know, when he dies, then becomes, you know, back to being human in depth. Death, not depth. God. That's rather dated, but I still give props to Lon Chaney Jr. for going through like let's see, like several hours of sitting still to like to have that makeup on. Apparently, according to Lon Chaney Jr., that they actually, to make sure that he didn't move, they actually like put pins in his hands and everything, so that way he wouldn't like move at all.
Jesus, dude.
Yeah. So in a sense, he also went through the same pain as Lon Chaney Sr. as the Phantom of the Opera, tying a piano wire to his nose to make it like a, more skull-like and deformed. So I definitely appreciate the effort put into it. I do think that it's a very, very iconic look, but it is a very dated look, and it's just looking back in hindsight, like it's it's like you said, very janky, but like back then they probably were just like, oh, that was probably like top of the line, awesome shit.
Yeah, man, I get that it's 80 years old and it's not going to look good by today's standards, but like there was no sense of believability there. Like,
right.
It was as
rough. Like a lot of people say, like nowadays, it's like he just looks like a hippie running around in the woods with that getup.
Man, it's like it's like if I didn't shave for a few weeks, you know what I mean? And it starts to crawl up my cheeks, right? Like it's pretty close to that, Like it was rough.
But other than that, overall, I actually like enjoyed this film, and I'm glad that I actually because I haven't seen this in a while. I saw it once when I was back when I was like a little kid. And of course, I loved it while I was a little kid because monster movies. But like going back, I still think like it doesn't hold up 100%, but I think it holds up enough to like keep my interest.
Yeah,
I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I think that there are definitely pieces that like, hey, those were okay by 1940 standards and definitely not cool now, right? So it holds up is a weird line that like I don't want to cross one way or another, but I mean I think it does a very good job at like establishing what werewolf movies are supposed to be. It's not horrible. Like it's not a bad viewing experience. I guess it's just kind of plain because at the time this was revolutionary, right? And the idea that werewolves didn't exist, right? And now as you said at the beginning of this podcast that like your goal was to prove that not every werewolf movie is the same. Well, this one kind of started all the fucking tropes, so of course this feels like every fucking werewolf movie you've ever goddamn seen. It wasn't
the first werewolf movie. There was a couple of them before this. This just happened to be the one that got huge, probably because Universal. Well, actually, no, because Werewolf in London was backed by Universal, but
either way, you get the idea. Is that like this was around the time where like this was a novelty. This wasn't like okay, it's another fucking werewolf story, right? Like, so it's of course going to feel like every werewolf thing you've seen, and honestly, it feels a little plain, but it's definitely not bad or unwatchable by any stretch.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I can't wait to go through the next ones. I know Ted's excited for the next one that we're doing, which is Stephen King's Silver Bullet, because
fuck Stephen King.
I was gonna say Ted likes that. No, Ted's interested in this because it's pre-crazy Gary Busey.
I don't think such a thing exists. I think that man came out of the womb in a straitjacket.
Gary Busey's in it, so is Corey Haim. And so we're gonna go with that and see improvements from different from that one to this. Probably see the same tropes and see how like that movie does like tropes differently. So that being said, I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah, I guess that's it for us. Honestly, movie was relatively short, so I'm happy we got this much out of it, to be honest with you. But
I think the only reason why we did it was because of the psychological aspects of the movie, and also the fact that with this being a metaphor for his, I guess, id desires. I'm not a psych. You're the psychology major. Am I making sense on that?
I mean, kind of ish, I guess. I think it's a stretch, but I don't know that it was intentional, but I think it's there.
But yeah.
It is what it is. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this one. By the time you're seeing this, I don't think we're still watching movies in the Discord, but my guess is that you probably don't have to wait too long before we pick up another series. So if you want, join the Discord, catch in for movies whenever we start watching them again. As always, you can catch us on our respective Twitch channels. Stallman at Traductus, myself at Ted Green Eagles. I think that's really it for this one, but these are going to come out daily for a couple of weeks here, so hang on for the ride. Here we go. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you here next time.
See ya.